Time only exists because entropy increases. Without change, without disorder spreading, there is no arrow of time, no before, no after. The beginning of the universe, that is the Big Bang, and the end of the universe, that is the heat death, are both changeless, timeless states. Zero entropy and maximum entropy collapse into the same experiential reality. They are the same, and thus zero equals infinity. If you haven't seen the previous two videos, I would recommend catching them after this one, but you don't need them to follow along today. And thus, here's the question I want you to sit with. What is a zero entropy state? Not just physically, philosophically. What are the properties of something that exists outside of time, that has no change, no differentiation, no parts, no decay? Because when you actually list those properties, and I'm going to do exactly that, you end up with a description that is word for word what the Upanishads call Brahman. And I don't mean it as a metaphor. That in itself is the structural identity. And if it is true, it means the ancient rishis were not making poetry. They were pointing at something real, something physics is now independently arriving at from a completely different direction. Zero entropy might be the closest thing we have to proof of Brahman. Let's find out if that holds up. Brahman is the ultimate reality, the unchanging, eternal, infinite consciousness that underlies all existence. Atman is the individual self. The Advait or non-dualist position, particularly as expressed in texts like Upanishads and the Ashtavakra Gita, is that Atman and Brahman are not separate. Tattvamasi, you are that. The apparent separation between your individual consciousness and ultimate reality is an illusion. You were never separate from Brahman. Nothing actually happened. The entire drama, all your struggles and karma are like a dream that never disturbed the dreamer. Now, how does this map onto entropy? Is Brahman a zero entropy state? There's an uncanny resonance here. Think about what entropy represents. Multiplicity, differentiation, change, the passage from one state to another. A high entropy system has many possible configurations, many distinctions, many parts that can be arranged differently. It is characterized by complexity, diversity, separation. A zero entropy state would be perfect order, perfect unity, no internal distinctions. Nothing would change because there would be no other state to change into. Time would be meaningless because time requires change, and change requires the possibility of different states. This sounds remarkably like descriptions of Brahman. Brahman is described as Nirgun, that is one without qualities or attributes. It is known as Nirvikalp, without modification or change. Advait, non-dual, without division, one without the other. It is pure consciousness without subject-object distinction, pure existence without becoming, pure being without temporal extension. The Mandukya Upanishad describes the fourth state of consciousness, Turiya, which is Brahman itself, neither inward-turned nor outward-turned consciousness, nor the two together, not an indifferentiated mass of consciousness, neither knowing nor unknowing, invisible, ineffable, intangible, devoid of characteristics, inconceivable, indefinable, its sole essence being the consciousness of its own self, the coming to rest of all relative existence, utterly quiet, peaceful, blissful, without a second. When Advait says nothing really happened, that you never separated from Brahman, this parallels the idea that from a timeless perspective, there is no change. All of apparent reality, all of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, is maya, illusion. Not that it doesn't exist in some sense, but that it has no ultimate reality. It is like a wave, thinking it is separate from the ocean, when it was always just water. From this view, the Big Bang and the subsequent increase in entropy would represent the apparent manifestation of multiplicity from unity. Brahman, in a sense, dreams the universe into existence. Pure, Undifferentiated consciousness gives rise to the appearance of space, time, matter, and individual beings. This is the process sometimes called the many from the one. The universe, with all its complexity, all its distinct objects and beings, would then be a high entropy relative to the original unity. Each distinct thing, each separate Atman that thinks itself separate, represents another degree of differentiation. The universe complexifies, entropy increases, and beings wander into samsara believing themselves to be separate individuals with separate destinies. Moksha, or liberation, would then be the recognition that this separation never actually occurred. You realize your identity with Brahman. You see that time, change, and multiplicity were always appearances within an unchanging awareness. As the Mundokopanishad says, he who knows the supreme Brahman verily becomes Brahman. If we push this metaphor further, is zero entropy the ideal state? Advaita would say yes, if by that you mean the state of Brahman is the only real state, the only true being. But we have to be careful here. Brahman isn't a state you attain, it is what you already are. The entire journey from this view is recognizing what was always true. You don't reduce your entropy back to zero. You recognize that the entropy, the multiplicity, the separation was never ultimately real. There's a parallel in physics that makes this even more intriguing. Some cosmologists have proposed that the ultimate fate of the universe is heat death, where entropy reaches its maximum. Everything becomes uniform, no energy gradients remain, no work can be done, no stars will be born, no change will occur. In a sense, maximum entropy looks a lot like minimum entropy. Both are states where nothing happens, where time becomes meaningless because no significant change is possible. This connects to another concept, the cycle of creation and dissolution. The universe is created, exists for a period, then dissolves back into Brahman. So the universe is manifested from Brahman, then the entropy increases, and then there's the ultimate pralay. The cycle repeats. Each cycle is called a kalp. From within the cycle, it seems like a vast span of time. From Brahman's perspective, nothing happened. It is like dreaming. When you wake, you realize the entire dream happened in a dimensionless instant. There is a paradox here. From the absolute perspective, from Brahman's viewpoint, if we can speak that way, timelessness, zero entropy, complete stillness. And if you think from the perspective of a photon of light, its entire journey from the surface of the sun to the earth takes 8 minutes. But for the photon, it all happened in an instant. If the same photon was to travel from a star thousands of light years away, all the way to your eyes, it might have taken light years for the photon from an external perspective. But for the photon, it all happened in an instant, the same perspective as Brahman. Now here's where things get interesting. In thermodynamics, entropy increase isn't inherently negative. High entropy enables structure at local levels. The sun radiates high entropy energy, which allows low entropy life to exist on Earth. Complex systems like living organisms can only exist because they export entropy to their environment. You couldn't have consciousness, couldn't have the richness of experience, couldn't have the universe as we know without entropy increase. So, is the goal to return to zero entropy? Is the manifest world a mistake? The mystical traditions give different answers. Some emphasize escape. Samsara is suffering. Liberation is cessation of individual existence, return to the source. This would align with seeing entropy as something to transcend. But there's another interpretation, one that is more paradoxical, more beautiful. Brahman manifests the universe as Leela, divine play. Creation isn't a fall from grace, but an expression of Brahman's nature. The many emerge from the one, not as an error, but as celebration. From this view, entropy increase, the manifestation of multiplicity, isn't the problem. The problem is avidya, ignorance, mistaking the wave for something separate from the ocean. The Chandogya Upanishad uses a beautiful analogy. Just as, my dear, by one clod of clay all that is made of clay is known, the modification being only a name arising from speech, while the truth is that all is clay. The Ashtavakra Gita makes this clear. There is no karma. The body does things, but not the Atman. This is crucial. The Atman, being identical with Brahman, never acts, never changes, never accumulates karma. All action happens in Prakriti, nature, matter, the manifest world. The Atman is the witness, pure consciousness, unchanging even as everything changes. In entropy terms, the Atman is the zero entropy ground state that never changes. All the complexity, all the entropy increase happens in the manifest world. Your true nature remains what it always was. When you realize this, you don't change the world's entropy. The universe continues evolving, stars keep burning, galaxies keep spinning. You simply recognize that your essential nature was never caught up in that process. These are hints for physics, intriguing possibilities. But these are also analogies, not proof. Physics describes what happens, not why or what it means. The spiritual claim goes further. The Brihadaranya Upanishad declares the Brahman is without a prior or a posterior, without interior or exterior. This Atman is Brahman, the experiencer of everything. Think about it this way. Right now, you are watching this video. You are aware of the screen, the sounds, maybe thoughts passing through your mind. But what is the awareness itself? Where do thoughts pop up from? And why? Can you observe the observer? That awareness, that pure witnessing doesn't change. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Your body ages. The world transforms around you. But the awareness that registers all this remains constant. That awareness is zero entropy. It has no paths to rearrange, no states to transition between. It simply is. Unchanging, timeless, always present. That is what the Upanishad mean when they say neti neti. Not this, not this. You're not your thoughts, not your body, not your memories or plans. You're the awareness in which all of this appears. The universe is high entropy, complex, differentiated, constantly changing. But the consciousness experiencing it, zero entropy, unchanging, eternal. You are that consciousness. The Kathopanishad says there is one who is the eternal reality among non-eternal objects. The one truly conscious entity among conscious objects, and who, though non-dual, fulfills the desires of many. Eternal peace belongs to the wise who perceive him within themselves, not to others. You always were, you always will be, or rather, you exist beyond the categories of was and will be, because those require time, and your true nature is. The ideal state isn't about changing from high entropy to low entropy. It is about recognizing that your true nature was never caught up in entropy to begin with. You are the space in which the universe appears, not a thing within the universe. And that space, that awareness, that Brahman, Atman, never changes, never acts, never suffers, never dies. The ancient sages condensed this entire truth into 4 Mahavakyas or 4 great sayings. Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. Ayam Atma Brahma, this Atman is Brahman. Tattvamasi, you are that. And Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. 4 different ways of saying the same thing. When Ramanujan received his mathematical insight from the goddess Namagiri in dreams, when he discovered that infinity collapses to almost zero, maybe he was glimpsing this truth, that the manifest and the unmanifest, the complex and the simple, the many and the one are not really separate. The universe began at zero entropy at the Big Bang. It will end at maximum entropy in heat death. Both endpoints are changeless, timeless. Nothing happens. And you are the unchanging zero, witnessing the changing infinity. You always have been. All of this is Brahman dreaming itself into apparent multiplicity. The wave was always the ocean. If this resonates with you, if you want to explore more about how physics and philosophy intersect, subscribe and stay with me on this journey. See you in the next video.